Estate Show with Pat Lopez, where we talk everything real estate. Today, my guest is Chris Summers from KW Empower and the Chris Summers team. Chris, welcome to the show.
Pat, I'm very happy to be here. Thank you for the invite. It's good to be back. It's my second time, right?
Yep, absolutely.
Awesome.
Okay, so what we're going to be talking about is the NAR settlement. Everybody's been talking about the lawsuit and what is going to be happening. One thing we don't know 100%. Everything has to be finalized. It has to go in front of the judge to sign off, and also the DOJ. They'll probably get involved, and there will be hopefully a final settlement, and they're talking about, mid-July, right?
Well, yeah, I think two things. Like one, obviously, it's wait and see.
Right.
Wait and see. But, in the interim, there's tons of misinformation out there, tons of clickbait, tons of headlines that just are not accurate at all. So kudos to you, Pat, and kudos to other people that are kind of like condensing this to have the high level conversation in terms of reality versus kind of what you see in the news or some of the headlines, which are just horrible.
Right. So once again, disclaimer, we don't know 100%, but NAR came out with 108 pages of what the settlement, could look like. And what we're going to do is break this down in two parts. We're going to do part one, what are the changes for the selling agent, and part two would be for the buyer's agent. Now, one big thing for the selling agent is in the MLS, they're going to take away the field where you would have put buyer's compensation in. Right?
Correct.
And that will change how you do your listing presentation and that kind of conversation. So tell me how that's going to change for you.
That's a good question. Like, we have part one is the listing side and part two is the buyer side. I don't really see a significant change with the listing side. In conversations with this is just here in Philly, in PA, other agents that I know, when they go out and meet with their sellers, Pat, their listing presentation is going to be pretty much the same.
Okay.
Yeah, and their listing compensation, in my mind, and at least for me, is going to be pretty much the same. Why? Because of wanting to generate maximum exposure to the buyer side. So like if we have those conversations where, hey, we're not going to offer the buyer's agent anything, well, you might lose half of the potential buyer pool. So I think it's a good question, and the question's going to come up a lot. It already has,
right,
for a few team members. But for now it's business as usual. I mean, obviously with this, more will be revealed. But ultimately, the listing contract dictates, how much the seller is paying to the broker, the listing side, and from there, what the broker is paying to the buyer's agent.
Right.
In the future, could the forms be updated a little bit where it's maybe more specific? Yes. But at the end of the day, it's very similar. I don't foresee a ton of change, at least with the mechanics on the listing side, other than a few small things. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Yeah.
Now, just to be clear, what you're saying is less exposure, and it's not less exposure because an agent won't show the property. Less exposure if the seller isn't paying a commission, the buyer may just not have the money and they can't put an offer in. Obviously you can't steer, so everybody's going to show the properties, but ultimately, if a buyer doesn't have the money to compensate their agent, if the seller isn't doing it, well then they're not going to be able to buy it. They're going to be short.
Correct. Like, that's a good point. I mean, it will still go to the MLS and it will still kind of be generated. But like, if you're not offering the buyer's agent anything, that you might lose potential opportunities for your seller. Where, I think the traditional model, where, that is happening, will kind of create more opportunities. Because, long story short, what if, the buyer just doesn't have the 2.5 to 3%? What if they're a first time home buyer? Lots of like what ifs.
Right.
Why even bother getting that, when things are working, but we can make them work better, with better communication and transparency, to the clients.
Right. So now your conversation, because the reason why you're on the show is you have a big team, 20 plus agents, you sell a ton of property in Philadelphia. So what are the conversations are you going to have with the seller? Are you going to say that, hey, we're not going to advertise a commission, but the buyer's agent may request a commission? Like how's that conversation going to look like?
Well, I think the conversation is going to be very straightforward, very similar to what it is now.
Okay.
And that's why I don't think there's going to be like significant changes where now, the listing, presentation and the paperwork is thorough. The buy side a little bit differently, and we'll
Right.
talk about that, in the second part too. But to go a little bit further, yes, the mechanics of how that is going to be structured, will be finalized, before you have the listing. But then, when so like you want to be able to be prepared, with the buyer's agent see something on the MLS and they're going to contact you. Hey, what are you being, what's being offered to the buyer's agent? I want to go back to them and have something solid where that can
Okay.
entice them or help them structure, an offer accordingly, because that's going to benefit, the seller. So I think the representation part is going to be very similar, maybe a few steps to ultimately get to that finish line. If you're, with a larger broker, Pat, kind of getting that info, on whatever website or
Right.
tool that it is outside the MLS is going to be, pretty easy to do.
Right.
So the question is, how does the buy side obtain that info? Is it going to be easy or difficult? Theoretically, it should be easy.
Right. So let me elaborate on that. So the agreement was not to put a commission in the MLS, but on your personal website or your company website, your, KW Empower, you have 1,000 agents. Well, your website, you could have 1,000 listings, in there. So you could advertise it in there. You just can't advertise it in the MLS.
Yes.
That's my understanding from that 108 page.
Correct. We could kind of go into the weeds of like ultimately what the benefit is. Like to me, I see a little bit of the benefit. I don't see a great,
Right.
I see a little bit more chaos, but I also see, the agents kind of like taking this, the bull by the horn. The train has left the station, things are changing, but for us to kind of like elevate our game, communicate more, be transparent, things will improve overall. But ultimately, especially on the listing side, in my mind, what this does is the biggest unintended consequence, which is a benefit for us, is like the strong can get stronger.
Right.
So, the realtors that have like the mindset, Pat, can flourish, during this transition.
Okay. Now, do you see more buyers going direct to the listing agents?
I think more will be revealed there, but like if we kind of rewind the clock, that's happening a lot already. Like we have we have partners with Zillow, right?
Right.
So listings go to Zillow, calls come in, and the people say, "Hey, I want to work directly with the agent." Or sometimes they don't know. If you have for sale signs on there, people still call the signs.
Right.
They want to like go directly to the agent. Digital media, same thing. But at the end of the day, the bulk of the process, is buyers also want to have their own representation. So
Right.
you're always going to have, those two sides of the coin there. And oftentimes the people that do contact, the agent directly, might get kind of directed to the brokerage or the team, or they might just be calling for info and they have an agent already. So could that be happening a little bit more? Sure. How much will it happen? I'm not sure it's going to create that much more direct contact from the consumers that there already is now.
Right. Now, the president of NAR, what's his name? Kevin Shears or Shears, whatever,
Yeah.
whatever his name is. I know it's Sears, but anyway, he was interviewed and he mentioned that on the listing side, you could still put, a 5% or a 6% or a 4%, whatever your commission is, and state in the paperwork that you are, and I understand the paperwork will change, but in the paperwork that you are going to give a commission to the buyer. That's still allowed. What it seems like it's not allowed is putting it in the MLS.
Yeah, I mean, that's really the only big change here, and that's what's kind of causing all this confusion.
Right.
I think there's going to be ways where it can be communicated, efficiently, effectively. Obviously, large brokerage firms, we could put it on the summersteam.com.
Right.
So I think on the buy side, they might need to do some extra steps to get there, and then ultimately the mechanics on the listing side we talked about a little bit. Is the forms will likely be updated.
Right.
At some point. Whereas now it basically states that the seller pays the broker X, and then of the X, how much is shared with a buyer's agent, or perhaps now it'll be specific. Boom, boom. But if you think about it, at the end of the day, okay, that doesn't really change anything.
Right.
Because that's where it is now. But the communication, from listing agent to buyer's agent, or buyer's agent to listing agent, because that's ultimately what's going to happen. They can't get the info right away like they used to. So they're going to need to do a little bit more work for their preparation, and we'll talk about on the buy side, do more work with a buyer presentation similar to listing agents
Right.
doing listing presentations.
Right, because the difference, will be that it's in the contract, the sales contract coming over saying that the buyer's agent wants a commission. That's where, you'll know. And the positive, and I know we're going to talk about this a little bit more, if you bring great value and you're a great buyer's agent, well, guess what? If the seller was only offering a 2%, you normally took the 2% and walked away. Well, now you can negotiate your worth. So if I think I'm great, I want 3%. I don't care that, prior when it was 2.5%. So, there is positives, on both sides. And I think ultimately, the cream's going to rise, to the top. And the biggest key is going to be, you need to be good. You need to be great. Because if you're great and you're willing to work really hard, you'll be successful.
Well, one, I think you're great.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome. But yeah, number two, on the listing side, or the buy side, yes, that we'll talk about that more. That value proposition and how that's being communicated. Most consumers don't really understand on either side of the equation. Like for us, the Summers team, I think we have a chart that says the 53 things we do for you when we represent the seller.
Right.
It's not 3.
Right.
53.
Right.
And it might even be more than that. The deals are hard. Selling real estate is hard. Representation matters. People want it, Pat.
Right.
They want that experience. Like, this is going to be one of the most challenging decisions in their lifetime, both on the buy and the sell side. So, to have, a commission, that is generated in order to achieve high level goals, whether it's proceeds that's going to go towards, the next steps of someone's life on the buy side, being a dream maker,
Right.
and having the American dream. People need the high level service and want it, right?
Right.
So for the agents that could express, hey, I provide the high level service and I can, explain it to you, I'm going to be with you, your partner, the whole way. People want that. And for the few that, that maybe don't want it, or that maybe don't see the value in it, oftentimes they become to learn.
Right.
So long story short, these changes, on the sell side, I don't think are going to be that transformative.
Right.
But it will kind of maybe create the process, and make it more transparent, and more perhaps streamlined. But more will be revealed.
Right.
I just think we talked about this as a result. The stronger brokerages and the stronger agents will basically become stronger.
Right. And to your point, people want service. That's why Ritz-Carlton exists, and that's why there's Motel 6 exist. And there's discount brokerages. I remember like Help You Sell. I had one broker said, "Oh, this is going to be the way of the future," and all that kind of stuff. And I don't even know if that company exists nowadays. So there's a lot of what you're saying is true. Americans like service, like to be catered to.
I mean, the service industry, and especially for realtors, I mean, it's serious business, and people want. And you're right, like these other examples over the years. I think we talked on the phone. It's like remember TV commercials like "Thank you, buy owner,"
Right.
or Zip Realty with a like a discount model, and another discount. Not to say there's anything bad about it, but ultimately it didn't work.
Right.
Why? Because the high level service and representation just wasn't offered. So when you kind of provide something, where, okay, the fees or the expense or the commission might be lower and someone saves money, are they really?
Right.
And if they want that's going to be an option for them too.
It's going to be available, and it's available right now.
Correct. So yeah, I mean that part you're right. It is available right now where people kind of have can choose to a certain extent. Yeah, but at the end of the day, as you said,
For sale by owner.
yeah, good luck with that. But yeah, the cream rises.
Right. Okay, so now let's. What you're saying is you really don't think there's going to be much of a difference. I mean, there could be, but that's just your opinion. Now, let's say there is a big difference. Let's say a lot of sellers say, you know what, I don't want to pay the buyer's agent, right? Because it's up to them. You can only give them the options. It's 100% up to them. So in that world where you have, 20, 30%, maybe 40%, how does that change? Because now with you having 20, 30 listings, how are you going to get these people in if they're contacting you directly because they don't have representation? That would change the dynamic of how you do. And then also for marketing, because right now the big marketing is throwing it on MLS and advertising, hey, here's a finder's fee. Anybody who wants to get paid, bring your people. Now, how much more work could it possibly be on the list side? Because now you're getting back to the 2008, 2009 days when you were a pioneer, on like YouTube and putting stuff out on social media to really draw people in, because heck, you really had to do that because there was 4 million listings out there, or houses for sale, right? And there weren't 4 million buyers, it was for darn sure, there was inventory for 2 years. So how do you think that could change things? I know you don't think it's going to happen, but that could change the dynamic too, no?
I mean, yes, more will be revealed. Yeah, but like my conversations with sellers is like, yes, it could still be listed on the MLS now, right, with a zero commission.
Right.
I mean, these things, could be done now.
Yeah, right.
And sometimes you do have some of that. You do have, some discount brokers out there, and are they going to settlement? Yes, but chances are those sale prices are much lower, right? And I think the conversation with sellers is, hey, with maximum exposure, you're going to be getting a much higher sale price, or with better terms, or a combination of both, by getting that. So even though it could still go there, if what you're offering to the other buyer's agent is zero, that's going to make that process a lot harder for them, with their buyers. I mean, could it work? Yeah. Could they get the commission there? Theoretically, yes. In my prediction, in those cases where that does happen, the sale price will probably end up being lower. So at the end of the day, maybe it doesn't create that much of a difference. But we talked about this, like as a listing agent, I want to maximize the opportunity, to get the buyer agent exposure. I don't want to lose people. For some of the buyers that are out there, like with our transfer tax
Right.
in Philadelphia, I mean,
It's expensive. Yeah.
it's very expensive. Like these people might not have enough money, to have the closing costs and the down payment and paying the commission. Some might, but on the listing side, I want to make sure, that we attract every potential buyer and buyer's agent, not just with one listing, but all of them.
Right.
Because as soon as you kind of have a reputation where this or that, I mean that's not good. So like I don't think the essence and the spirit of real estate is going to change that much as far as cooperation and working together, with other brokerages, teams, agents, because that's what has worked. So with the lawsuit, it doesn't necessarily going to change what works. I think the communication and the transparency is what's going to change.
And the deal here is that I think the statistics is like 70, 75% of sellers are buyers. So they're going to buy. So, and it would be more expensive. So if I turn around and I sell a house for $300,000 because I'm buying a $500,000 house, if I say, no, I'm not giving a commission, well, guess what? If the house for $500,000 say, no, I'm not getting a commission, it's going to actually cost you more money. So, most sellers end up being buyers. And what you said is valid. It's a small world, it's a small community, and everybody has to play nice together.
Yeah, I mean, look at like your the best players on teams within a same team, like where there's collaboration, where there's communication, whether it's helping someone out, like assist. Maybe it's not the best analogy, but that matters, right? And if you're kind of like some rogue, doing this way, maybe just to attract some business, that's not going to work well over time.
Right.
So cooperation, transparency, not just with consumers, but with other agents at other offices. This is the opportunity where, like this lawsuit came about in my mind for very small things happening elsewhere, right? And the state of Pennsylvania, like we've been doing this well.
Right.
We are ahead of the curve. Kudos to GPAR, kudos to PAR. But ultimately, okay, things are changing. We can't change it, but we can make our communication better. And again, not just survive, but thrive
Right.
as a result.
Right. So ultimately, the change, hey, there's not going to be a spot to put a buyer's agent, commission in the MLS, but on your personal websites and things like that, you can do that. There is a spot for a seller assist. You can advertise for like a seller credit type of thing. So that can go into the MLS. I'm sure a lot of people on their websites will advertise some of that commission. Also, you can negotiate and talk to the buyer's agent. I'm sorry, the seller, to turn around and say, hey, there's offers come in, and buyers agents are going to ask for commission, and you can have that conversation so from jump that there's some negotiation there.
Correct.
So that's that's going to be part of it, and ultimately, your thoughts are, and my thoughts as well. I don't really think there's going to be that of dramatic change in my opinion, and I think yours from what I'm hearing from you.
I don't think so either, because I think, it starts with the listing side. Like if you don't have a seller, you don't have a buyer, right? So it starts there where, the listing, part or that commission is predetermined. And maybe it comes up in ranges, but I don't think that's good. So it's already there. So the buyer's agents, okay, will need to, find this information out. Like I could already foresee a KW Empower page, where all the listings are there, and here's the buyer agents,
Right.
involved. And then, could that be modified? Could someone make a proposal or whatever? But I think that's going to be more on the buyer side. Like a seller side is not, going to change, in my opinion. So I think the communication to other agents, but more so the communication to consumers, is going to become important. But the unintended consequences, Pat, I can almost see it, because this always happens. Like people try to do something good with these things, and similar to the banks
Right.
in the financial crisis, the banks didn't fail; they got stronger. And I don't mind getting stronger, but I think the top brokerages will get stronger as a result. I think the top teams will get stronger as a result, and the top agents will get stronger. But the opportunity for the other realtors in the business is they have the opportunity right now to get stronger. It starts with mindset, and if they're consumed by fear,
Right.
they're not going to last in the business.
Right. So the big thing, real estate's hard. It's not $1 million listings. Like you don't know what these people did to get to the $1 million listing. So real estate is super hard. The key is going to be, because there's a lot of agents out there. And if we look at 1992 and 2008, we had 4 million transactions. Last year, 2023, we also had them in 92 and in 2008. But back then there was only 1 million agents. Now there's approximately 2 million. So you got to get good. You got to get strong. Like what you mentioned, cream rises to the top. And you got to be a student, and you have to show value. I think that's going to be the biggest thing, especially what you mentioned is all these negative headlines where, NAR can no longer, control commissions. Well, they never did.
Correct.
It was up to you. When you went out, you said how much you were going to take that listing for.
Yeah, the clickbait and the sensationalism, is absurd, and I think that's that hurts the people thinking about getting into this industry,
Right.
which is awesome. You see that, and some people aren't doing much. The fear, causes paralysis, but you don't have to be fearful from it. And yeah, maybe some of these things, can improve the client experience, which is ultimately what it's all about.
Right.
But like I was just thinking about, a settlement I had yesterday. Yeah, I hear about the settlements from my team. I was speaking with, an agent, who I asked, her opinion on this. She had a there's very difficult settlements. Like, the value that realtors provide is immense.
Absolutely.
And, perhaps, over the years, that value proposition maybe hasn't been communicated as clearly as it should.
Hmm.
And if that's the case, that's on us and that's on our associations. I don't think that's the case. You only, it's like a restaurant, right? People are like so happy with a restaurant, but that one person, comes and they had a negative experience. They do the 1-star review on Yelp. The people, they just don't do the
Right.
5 stars. So like, I don't ultimately what happened here is bizarre. You could agree or disagree with the settlement, but I think the opportunity, is really to do better as an industry, to do better in what you do, and ultimately be happy for it because the strong will get stronger.
Okay, great. So we're going to be talking about part 2,
Part 2.
buyers, right? Once again, Chris Summers, KW Empower. If somebody wants to get a hold of you, how would they do that?
TheSummersTeam.com, Instagram, Facebook, The Summers Team. I'm pretty easy to find. We have a great team. We're growing. We just added a few people, Pat.
Right.
We added a few. Is it a result of this? I don't know.
I'm ready to join.
But probably. But no, thank you so much for having. This is a very important topic, and obviously, more, time will tell. Things aren't solidified. What we're talking about is probably, will be happening. So at least we kind of know what to expect. But ultimately, it'll be up to court's approval.
Okay, perfect. We're going to go into part 2, buyer sides, some of the changes on that 108-page agreement that NAR did. So that's the Real Estate Show with Pat Lopez, where we talk everything real estate. Be sure to subscribe to the show, follow the show on Facebook, Instagram, leave comments. Tell me what you want to hear because this show is for you. We talk everything real estate, no limits. Hope you enjoyed the show, and we will see you.